I'll call the Committee of the Whole meeting for January 27th order at 1:01 p.m.
Please note, council meetings are streamed live and recorded on YouTube. Attendees acknowledge that in accordance with Section 17(2)(g) of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, names, addresses, and other details provided when speaking at a council meeting will be publicly shared. Should you have any questions related to the collection or disclosure of personal information, please contact the Legislative and Advisory Services Division for the Town of High River by sending an email to foip@highriver.ca.
Thanks, Jody. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Kinghorn that Committee of the Whole adopt the agenda for the Committee of the Whole meeting January 27th as amended, as I would like to, we need to add an in-camera section, which will be 5.5, to discuss two labor issues.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. You have the motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Previous minutes. Ask for a motion from Councillor Walsh that the Committee of the Whole adopt the minutes from the January 13th Committee of the Whole meeting as presented.
I'll give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. First item of business, aquatics expansion construction update. Chris Cayley.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor Snodgrass and Council. So I'm here for a brief update on the construction activities for the project. I can't see with this computer screen. So, the project started off originally back in July, and we've continued to have construction. Our recent activities, we are wrapping up the underground activities and getting more into that above ground construction, which we'll start to see a little bit more visually, publicly from afar. So as we wrap up the remainder of the underground activities, we'll start to see a lot of that excavation be completed. We have steel being delivered and being installed. So you'll notice that half of the west wall has come down, and the very far west wall of the existing pool, half of that has come down. It's coming down in two phases. So half of it came down. We're now bringing steel in place. Some of that steel will get stood up in place before the second half of that wall gets brought down, and it's just done in phased to coordinate to ensure that the existing building still has its structural integrity. So we did have some noise that came from that. So we did experience some noise due to those activities, and so we are a little bit more prepared now for what that's going to look like for phase 2, and I think everyone's a little bit more prepared. We weren't going to know what the noise impacts were going to be really until we got into the thick of it. With those activities taking place, we've been good up to this point with maintaining the temperature of the pool space and the humidity within the pool space, which has been good because that was a bit of a challenge at the beginning. We got that under control. While we were taking down that temporary or that existing wall, though, we had a bit of a cold snap. So we did have it got a little cooler, and so we have been able to ramp up the air handling unit to compensate for some of that coolness. We've got the manufacturer looking into it so that when we bring down that second phase, if we have a similar cold snap, that hopefully we won't be kind of behind the 8 ball, we'll be a little bit ahead of the 8 ball, trying to keep it warmer. So we are investigating and looking into that because we did notice that it got a little chillier just because we don't have those two walls in place now. To date, we have 217,000 and change for change orders that have been approved, and these are just as we find any discrepancies in the plans and ensuring that we get those kind of identified and rectified, or if we've had anything that's been spec'd and hasn't been able to be. You run into the odd time where we have stuff that's spec'd and it's not available for the project, and it may have impacts to the delay of the project, so we usually alter in something different, often very similar in costs as well. So those do add up, and just some deficiencies we found along the way. On top of the change orders we have approved to date, we are working through a change directive, and that change directive is to accommodate an adjustment in the weeping tile design, and so that has been broken out into 3 pieces. And so later today at the regular meeting, we'll go through in detail kind of a portion of it. It's broken out in 3 phases. So one phase being the current activities that have taken up to place in order to keep the project going and moving along and up to schedule. keeping construction activities moving along. 2 is what the cost of the adjustment in design is. And then 3 being if there are any scheduled impact delays to the project, there's a cost associated to it. So we're breaking it down and going through those very diligently. And so you'll notice I'll come back here in the regular meeting to discuss item 2, which is what the cost of the design change or scope change is going to be. So with the pool and the construction activities, we've obviously had some temporary disruptions throughout as we need to access some of the existing infrastructure or some of the existing building for the construction of the new building. And we've been able to manage that with staff and in coordinating with some of the user groups or some of the programming that's already in place. So Shadows has been, really willing to work with us on, we need a disruption of about this much time. Where does it best fit within our day so that they can get that work done? So it has the least amount of impact to the public, but is allowing the project to continue moving forward. With the small arena, we continue to have no Zamboni access for the Zamboni to do the ice maintenance. So we continue to do that still with the tools we've been doing in the past. And we've gotten a little bit more efficient with it, but it's been challenging. We won't have access to the Zamboni for the duration of this season, just the way the activities are lining up. By the time we get it in there, we'll be pretty much getting ready for ice out activities, and so we're really focusing on making sure that we can get the appropriate equipment in for ice out activities and to ensure that we can transition it from ice activities to dryland activities efficiently, and we don't have any impacts on our user groups that way. So that concludes my presentation. Hi, I'll open up for questions.
Thanks, Kaylee. Questions from council? Councillor Nychuk?
Do you want questions in council or do you want some prep before you come to council? The regular meeting.
The regular meeting?
I can ask them twice, or I'd hold off until the regular meeting if there's people in attendance. But
Why not, if it's a question pertaining to the change order thing, why don't we leave that for regular? If it's anything else, then bring it in here.
Ask it.
Where do I want to start? So we had a contingency of 2.4. We're now at like 6, right? With the 217 and the 3 something that you're projecting right now. And that's without the costs of delay or reflecting the costs of temporary dewatering. So I don't understand how they can give us a cost on the weeping tile, the upgrade if you want to call it that, and they can't give us a cost on dewatering. That one kind of blows me away that they can't give us that number. If it was my business, I'd know damn well how much that dewatering was costing me, but.
It's not that they haven't given us a cost. We weren't confident with the information they provided us. And so we've been going back and forth and asking for more documentation so we can review it to
Does confident mean you didn't believe the number they gave you?
We wanted to validate the information they provided us.
Okay. It's very diplomatic. That was the biggest thing about how do they not know what dewatering costs and where's that going to fall in. Then the other one was, where did we get this brought to the town's attention that similar solutions were implemented with weeping tile and sump systems? Were those town projects or were those external, private, either residential or commercial projects that came to light on what they're doing?
For sure. I can answer that question. That was given to us by, so we saw it on both ends. So we saw it just from our own activities for utilities on the residential side. And then we've also been, when we were reviewing the options, we spoke with the contractors and consultants that were creating the designs for us and giving us the options. And they had informed us that they had implemented similar solutions within town for other businesses.
Okay. And I forget, I didn't make a note of it, but how many boreholes were done prior to the project starting? And none of that gave any indication that this water was existing. That's correct, right?
That is correct.
So this is something that's changed recently.
Yes, that is correct. I can speak to more information that we were able to gather afterwards. So we were using the geotechnical report to determine try to follow where the change had happened. We were able to deploy our water level loggers in town this year as well, and we were able to take that data and refer it back to when we were previously collecting level loggers, and we did see there was also a change in those, so it was almost kind of a bit of a backup. And then our consultants also who were doing the design and had been a part of the geotech as well, not only did they also came out to site and actually measured pumps and measured actual conditions in order to kind of give us some validation behind what needed to take place.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a pretty dynamic aquifer that's there because the distillery draws from it as well. So it has changed. I'm just trying to figure out why, what would have caused the change as of late anyway. Political correctness won't have me say how it changed previously with development in town, but it did because people dug holes and did things. But okay, last question. Extended closures, July and August. What are we planning those extended closures to be? If they happen to manifest, unless you play catch up between now and then, is that?
The intent with those potential closures is if we're still negotiating the whole, is there going to be a delay? If there's going to be a delay, how much is the delay? And what's the best way to fend off how much that delay is going to be? And one of the options may be that maybe we turn over the existing pool to them sooner to accelerate some of the work that needs to be done within the existing pool basin for the renovations.
Okay, thank you. That's kind of that's my list. Thanks much.
Councillor Barton?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any more questions because Michael took them all.
Sorry, Councillor.
One question I have is, so you mentioned there's going to, for the rest of the season with the ice, small ice surface, it won't be able to access Zamboni, but is the intention to have it up and going by September?
Yes.
That's a short and concise answer. Thank you.
A couple of things on what Michael was talking about. Something's the water table's changed or whatever, but I'm glad we know this now and we can put the proper solutions in place rather than if it was dry when they did the boreholes. And if it was dry now and then it came later on after we built the building, now we got a real mess. So yes, it's an expensive change, but I think it's an extremely important one. I'm damn glad we know now that we can do the right solutions. My question is does any of this affect the structural integrity of the new facility?
No, that's why we have our geotechnical engineers involved in the design, and we have all the different consultant groups, because that's what they do, is if there is a change and that changes in that design, and what does that mean for changes like that? Does that just require more piping for the weeping tile and the water? Does that require, so for instance, different pumping? We were originally going to have a sump pump. It's just a matter of changing the pump. And then it's a matter of what does that do for backfill? And so that's something that our geotech consultants, by having them on board during the project, which is standard practice, they monitor all that while we're in the process of construction to ensure that we are not having anything that would have any issues with the structure. So that's all validated through the process and through the design when they find out, well, what are the conditions? What are we designing for now? And this is what the upgrade's going to look like to ensure that this has zero impact other than obviously the change itself.
Yeah, there's ways to mitigate these things when you know about them. There's no question.
That's correct.
There's multiple buildings right behind us downtown that are in the same. I remember the Service Credit Union when that building was built. Remember, it was in the middle of Little Boat Creek, and they had a hell of a time continuing, and they built it properly and mitigated it in a way that sits there today just fine. This is standard issue with construction, and it can be dealt with. So little piece that I had on the water slide. I understand it's been ordered or designed, and go ahead.
No, okay. Keep your question going.
Okay, so I'll finish my question. The only reason why I ask about it is with the kids, our kids, often when we go to these places, if it's a bigger water slide, They can be really dark inside, and it kind of freaks them out. Dark like the inside of a cow, I call it, which is pretty dark. And I've had my head up there. I've had my head up there. And the slides we have seen have the holes cut in. I think if I remember right, back in the early days, the slide was kind of looked to be designed with those holes cut in and colorful plexiglass pieces so that light can shine in. And I just want to make sure that that's in place, because Oren has been very clear that that better be in place, Dad.
I would have to go back and confirm because I wasn't a part of when we selected the design. So I can't really answer to it. The renderings show it to have like the bubbles, that bubble look. I'd have to go back and take a look at the shop
When you
drawings to
get some
confirm.
drawings, send them to me and I'll get my 10-year-old to sign off on them, I guess. So keeps my life
good.
better. Anything else? That's all we got. Thanks, Kaylee.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, no, it's horrible. Trying to hear Kaylee was just bouncing all over.
I think if we turn the system down to get rid of the echo, but if everyone can speak into their mic better,
We can try it.
more closely.
Did you turn it down a little bit? Okay.
You want to turn it down a little bit more? We'll just try it and see, because the echo is,
Yeah, it's pretty tough.
yeah.
So mic directly in front of you and talk loud. BGC agreement. Jody, Shelley, Shirley.
All right, so we'll speak right into the microphone. I don't know if everyone can hear any better. So yes, in your committee of the whole agenda package, we did include the BGC agreement, which actually had a 5-year term until the end of 2024. Of course, there were some other activities occurring at the facility. We have not executed. There is an option for an additional 5 years. We haven't executed that. Council did have some good questions and discussion points at the last council meeting, so we have brought this back today. As mentioned, Councillor Walsh did ask for the annual report. Before the meeting today, we didn't have time to dig into that further, but we did forward the 2024 financial statements, which I believe were actually for year ending March 31st, 2024, so the year previous to that, so majority of 2023. We can follow up on any additional information regarding that information to share with council members. Shelley, of course, is here. She is our staff liaison with BGC. We also do have Shirley Puddock. I want to make sure, is your title chair? It's not CEO. She is the CEO for BGC Foothills Clubs. And then we also have in the gallery both Nicole and David, so that if there's any questions regarding the facility specifically, we wanted to make sure that any possible questions that came up, that hopefully we had the right people here in order to answer those for council. So Shelley and I don't know if you have anything you want to say. We didn't come prepared with a formal presentation. We wanted to have more of a discussion. Is there anything you want to add?
Some of just the history pieces a little bit.
Oh, Shelley has a lot of the history. So would you like her to provide a bit of a recap on that? Okay, there you go, Shelley.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I'll check with Mayor. I always tease that I'm going to read something really long. I typed all this up to read today. I did not. When Jody and I met last week to get together, we talked about how sometimes it's important that we get a picture given to us, but sometimes we just need some color added to it. So I'm hoping what we can offer today is just some color to the picture, just to help provide some more information that will help us understand how we have this, along with all of our amazing social profit organizations in town, what BGC does for our community and how it kind of got this way, because I'm not sure everybody knows. I will make it short, though. So the building was donated originally to Literacy for Life. Literacy for Life then signed a partnership with what was then the Foothills Youth Foundation. And the Foothills Youth Foundation ran youth programming out of that building for a number of years. Programming slowly started to diminish, and there was just less and less numbers. But just prior to the flood, the numbers were actually quite low that Youth Foundation was seeing that was running out of that building. During the flood, Boys and Girls Club was the Boys and Girls Club at that time, was running programming out of Diamond Valley. They offered to come out to Saddlebrook and offer some programming for our youth out at Saddlebrook, which was great. We liked the work that they were doing, and so we asked if they'd want to partner and maybe utilize the building that the Youth Foundation was still running. So they moved into, we coordinated a cleanup after the flood of the building itself, did a bit of a cleanup out there, and BGC moved in there, and as families transitioned back into High River, offered programming for children and for youth out of that facility. We then worked with the Youth Foundation to talk about what was the best future moving forward. They weren't able to provide direct programming, which was the agreement for that facility. So that facility was donated so that we could do youth programming. So it was programming for the youth of our community. What we wanted to make sure is that we held that integrity. Our agreement was that it was on town land, and that if the youth program wasn't able to continue in that building, that the building would actually revert to the town of High River. So in January of 2019, we inherited the building. So it became a town of High River facility. Boys and Girls Club at that time had agreed, we asked if they would partner and would they be interested in signing the lease, which is the lease that you see before you today, to continue providing youth programming. You'll see in the lease that it's kind of a misnomer name in the sense that it's age 5 and up. But for us, it was most important that we had programming for youth, because there isn't a lot of youth-specific programming in High River. They continued to provide the programming. At the time, Literacy for Life continued to be a sublease in that building. And last year, because BGC had wanted to expand their youth programming for our residents, had asked that the lease with Literacy for Life discontinue so they could have use of the full building. That happened in late spring, and midsummer, we found the mold. So, and have been out since, at least for the children's programming. So the facility itself is actually a town-owned facility on town land. The partnership has been with BGC to provide the youth programming for our residents. Again, that is children and youth programming. So in the basement of the facility, it is before and after school care. There's actually another program that runs, I'm going to get the name wrong, but it's for children who are in part-time kindergarten. So if they're in the BGC program when they're not in kindergarten. So some kindergartens are half days or only a couple of days a week. So they do have some day-long programs in there as well. And then evenings and weekends, it is used for youth. So the youth program that currently operates out of there it fluctuates anywhere between 60 and 70 youth per week that utilize that facility. It is an active youth program upstairs, and they have a number of different grants that they apply for, and are always looking to expand programming and services there. The youth, there is no charge for their program upstairs. So any of the youth programs are all run for free. They also do additional things for, they have partnerships because it's a national program. They have access to partnerships with places like Canada Goose. So they got 60 jackets donated this winter that went to our youth. They have a partnership with WestJet because they provide national programming. So they just have access to some additional funds and programming that we might not have. Shirley was mentioning about a food program that was for families that a local restaurant here in town saw great benefits from because they were able to access local services. So as much as possible, they do utilize local businesses. Including our radio station and paying for ads, that sort of thing. In the basement, it is a paid-for program. I think it's about 80% of the families are on subsidies, and some of the families aren't able to afford the subsidies. So BGC subsidizes then that subsidy, and then there's either no cost or very low cost for those families. What a lot of people don't know is that BGC also runs a daycare in town. So it's at a separate facility. They have, I believe it's a license for 96 kids. They have around 60 in there right now, and they do pay normal rent, market value rent for that facility. So they are a paying full organization in town, but also run services for us out of that facility. There might be some questions specific to the lease, which Jody and I would be happy to answer for you. We just thought that might just provide some additional information about the history of how we were lucky enough to have them here. Since they expanded to High River, they have expanded actually to a lot of southern Alberta. Shirley and her team also manage the Lethbridge branch. They've just taken over some daycares actually in Calgary. They're in Nanton, Diamond Valley, Pincher Creek still? No, that's good, because that was a long drive. It's the financial statements before you. If you have any questions specific to that, Shirley is here to gladly answer that, because what's before you today is more on a larger program, not just specific to that youth center, or the youth programming. That's it for me, I think, if that helps color the picture a little bit, but happy to answer any questions. And Jody was around as well when we made the change to the lease. When we look at the lease and rereading it, a number of things need to be changed, just the name change. So nationally, Boys and Girls Club changed their name to BGC, so we want to make sure that that's reflected. You'll see throughout the agreement that we talk about a mini putt that is no longer there, so we'll want to update that to the Brian Perry Youth Park and make those changes as necessary. The other thing that we can talk about, and that's, I'm happy that Nicole is here, is just to address the schedules that are in the back, that what falls under BGC's responsibility and what falls under the town's responsibility. And as well, Jody might have some more information for you just about other leases that are similar, that this isn't the only lease that the town has for $1, because there are some other town-owned facilities where we have partnerships with other organizations as well that not everybody might be aware of. Jody, or Mayor and Council.
I'm happy to leave it open to Mayor and Council to ask questions.
Thanks, Shelley. Councillor Jones.
Thank you so much for that update. I have a couple of questions. When it was given to Lit for Life, did they do all the, like once the building was moved and put on that site, did they do all the taking care of it, any maintenance, all that kind of stuff that needed to be done, or was it the town?
Back then, we weren't owning the building, it was just the land. So the agreement was that the Youth Foundation, so they're the primary organization that did that at that time, everything fell to their responsibility. It was part of that agreement that when they weren't no longer able to maintain those responsibilities, then the building reverted to the town. Okay. So this is new since 2019.
Okay, and they closed the elevator back in 2009 because?
It just wasn't working as far as we know. So we don't have a lot of history on that. We do know that there was water in that shaft after the flood, and we did some investigating. And just to clarify as well, on BGC's behalf, it was the town wanting to ensure that the building was meeting standards as much as possible regarding accessibility, but it wasn't their request. It was kind of a wish list item of, boy, if we could have a working lift, that would be great. But the building itself is deemed accessible because of the main floor. So while the children's programming is downstairs, right now they can move things upstairs if need be, but because it wasn't an inaccessible building, they were able to get accredited for their programs and their services. And but with the elevator shaft not working for so long and the water coming in, let's see if we can get this working, opening the door was Pandora's box.
Okay, and with all the programming that you have discussed in the agreement, it does talk about, excuse me, 25 hours a month. It sounds like you guys, they provide more than that, is that?
It's
A fair
5 days a
guess?
week for the before and after school care, as well as the day program that I mentioned. In addition to that, it is 3 evenings a week plus Saturdays. So a lot of their youth programming happens on Saturdays as well.
So you had said the daycare isn't in that facility?
It's a separate facility that they rent separately from a private landlord.
So what was in the basement was, like you said, kindergarten and up?
Before and after school care.
Oh, before
And
and
what's
after,
the name of the program? Kinder care. So when they're not in kindergarten, then they're there for a day program.
Okay, and my last question is, the financial statement, does that include all programs, including so all programs, all combined?
Yeah,
Okay.
not Lethbridge or Calgary, yeah, we weren't there, just Foothills.
Just Foothills? Okay.
So if you like, we can separate out, and we can ask Shirley to do that. We haven't done that because I see their financial statements both through FCSS funding and United Way funding. That is sufficient for us, so we haven't asked for a specific breakdown of what happens out of that center, but certainly going forward we can. And to be fair, it does say that in the agreement. So we can do that going forward, that it's specific to that facility.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions? No, there is. Councillor Kinghorn, the 11th.
Oh, you'll be so
As
happy, Mayor
usual.
Snodgrass. Not a question, I want to thank you folks for what you do. I've had the opportunity to work with a number of these kids. We do some day camps for them, and over at the Bloomport, they bring all the kids over, and it's an amazing group, and really thank you for everything that you do. And they help out at the parking as well. So thank you again.
Councillor Nychuk.
I'm going to ask a question, but forgive me if it's out of context, because these financials were sent to us today, and I was running a business up until I walked in the door here, so I didn't really have a chance to look at these because they were sent this late this morning. So there's, in the lease commitments of the financial, it's section 8. I don't know where that falls into this document. I was just kind of scrolling through it, but there's High River at $4,000 per month on lease commitments. That's for a building external to the one that we provide, correct? That's some of this daycare?
But actually, the rent's increased to $6,900.
Okay. Thanks.
Did you want that in the microphone? The answer?
No,
Okay, great.
Thank you for getting that. I assume that's what it was.
No further questions. Thanks, Shelley. Thanks, Shirley. Jody, you're not done, are you?
And if I can add one piece of clarity.
I guess I have a question. If Committee of the Whole has any direction for how they would like to see this proceed so that we can come back with a formal presentation for council. I guess the question in my mind is, are we looking to extend for an additional 5 years? Are we looking for an interim 1 year? This may also have an impact as to what Shirley would like to see happen. With the building, I'm assuming we're all like go. So just there were a number of questions at that last council meeting. So if we're all good, we can come back with the 5-year option, and then council can discuss it at that point.
I think that's fair, but I've got Councillor Walsh first on that.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. My only other question with regards to the lease is clarifying who is responsible for what. When I read through the original user agreement, pardon me, not lease, the user agreement suggests that the BGC would be responsible for upgrades and changes to the facility. So my first question is, how is it that the town became in providing a lift to upgrade the facility when it is in the lease that it is as is?
I can answer that to my best of my ability. Jody will chip in as well. We do need some clarity on some of this. I know, I'll use the flooring as an example, that we were hoping to have the flooring done. That would typically, under this agreement, fall to BGC. However, there is, the ground is heaving. That then falls to the town. So then who
Okay.
covers it? So it's some of those things. When we read the lease, it's kind of an as-is lease. And so that's where I wanted to state that it wasn't BGC asking. It was, now that it's a town-owned facility, it was the town's desire to get that up to code and to make sure that the buildings that we have fall within that. What BGC does have access to, and they've offered on a number of occasions, is they can apply for grants that sometimes municipalities can't. And so Shirley will keep her eyes and ears open if there is grants available for those kind of facility enhancements. As an example, they've added a kitchen to the basement, which I believe was in partnership with Home Depot. And Home Depot also donated funds for them to upgrade the kitchen on the main floor. So they are doing program enhancements, or facility enhancements as well. The lift was just kind of an interesting, I think our maintenance team has done a really great job in looking at to-do lists and actioning them. And so this was just something that was on a to-do list that we're really grateful they opened that door, because those kiddos were playing in mold.
Yeah.
And so we're really glad that they did that, and it's also allowed us to kind of have these discussions. So only partly answers your question.
Okay, it's a really good start, Shelley. Thank you. You've put just the right amount of color on the pages today. But further to that, the clarification in this agreement, from my perspective, as I read through it, my first question is, it states that the responsibilities are very different than what we're presenting. That was my understanding of it.
So the responsibilities in the agreement are very different than...
Understanding that the building was taken as is.
Oh, okay. So I think, if I'm understanding correctly the question, when you're looking at the lift, yes, it was as is. And I do recall initially, because there is some grant funding that BGC could have access to that we wouldn't, that if there was anything to happen to the lift, it would be at their cost and their responsibility. I believe it wasn't until this opportunity for grant funding that recently came out with Alberta for accessibility that the town then figured, should we look into that? And then, of course, that's how we ended up in this situation. So not necessarily something that the town was responsible for under the agreement, but there was potentially an opportunity there where the town could improve the accessibility based on this other opportunity for funding.
Thank you. That makes it much clearer. When you come to these things in hindsight, it's difficult to assemble the pieces to understand why it looks one way, but it appears differently. The only other question I have, and it may just be a term, the conversation referred to right now, we're talking about a lift in a shaft, in an elevator shaft. Is it a lift or is it an elevator? Is it equal to an elevator? Like, I'm just curious as to what its definition really is.
It is a lift.
We can defer to Riley.
Can we defer to Riley or?
He's smiling.
Yes. Well, my question really is, so this is a lift, yet we've had conversations about an elevator at another facility, and the numbers are as different as night and day. So clarification, are we looking at a lift or are we having an elevator?
Riley is saying it is a lift. Having seen the door to it, it looked like an elevator to me, so it may be completely me that is referring to it as an elevator, where that is not the case.
So a lift is usually a rather rough cage that goes up and down within a shaft, right? You need a key to turn it on and off, right? Thank you. That's all.
Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I did have a couple of things. I would like to know, we did have, I think, 3 items that look like the town would need to spend money on to maintain the facility coming up in the next year or so. What, if we did a 5-year contract, what potentially are some of those maintenance concerns or issues that we would need to see? And also with the financials, I would actually like to see them divided out into, because it's really hard to see what one is that we're, putting money and time into a facility that we own, versus one where you guys are, paying rent and charging funds. So I'd like to see that change in determining that. But I mean, I don't have anything against extending the agreement. I know some of the issues was the charge on what we charge to have you in the facility, and I don't know what people feel about, like, I don't know how did the $1 come about originally?
I can speak to how the $1 came about originally. In order for any agreement to be valid, it has to have some consideration. So the $1 fills that consideration piece. In the last few years, we have actually increased that to $10 just because of economy, inflation. It's really just a requirement of any agreement to be binding. It needs to have some form of consideration within it. So it was $1.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify on the other pieces, we are going to follow up on splitting out the finances specific to High River and this location, and then what the town will work on for the next few years, more so focused on the items that were initially planned. Is that what you're meaning?
Yeah.
Like the flooring, and I believe it was a bathroom renovation?
No, I think the bathroom renovation came with
Correct.
With the mold.
Exterior.
Oh, that's done.
No,
Oh,
the exterior,
the
flooring,
chinking part.
and there was a third one.
Exterior refinishing.
Exterior
Yeah, the exterior-
refinishing.
I thought there was 3.
I think the roof is done.
Was the other one the lift?
No lift, but we decided the lift.
We're not doing the lift.
Okay.
The
Okay.
exterior.
So just because there's no microphone for the other comments that came behind me, being the exterior of the building, that would still fall under the town, as that would be considered a structural item. However, anything within the building would be, like the flooring, the painting, those type of items within the facility would fall to BGC. However, we do have that concern with the flooring because the flooring was cracking due to the heaving of the foundation underneath. So that is how that flooring item came to be a town cost, because the cracking seemed to be directly correlated to the issues below that flooring. Does that answer the questions?
Would that be, like, let's just say, over a 5-year period, like, is that sort of what we're looking at? Or are there other issues within the building that might need to be looked at?
Just those. We'll include them in that.
Those are the ones that have been identified to date.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Walsh.
Thank you. Just further to Councillor Jones' comment about the, how did we come to the $1? More specifically, like I know that there are complementary or supportive things done. Did the group apply for, like, was it we'll give you the facility, whether it's $1 or $2? Was that an application made, or just the offering as you collaborated the agreement?
There was no application made. It was, I would hate to say a matter of convenience, but they were in the facility already offering programming. So when Foothills Youth Foundation was essentially acting as a landlord only, because they were not providing any programming directly, it just made sense when we spoke with Shirley at the time that they were already in the facility. Are you willing to take on the additional responsibilities of being the landlord and some of these additional tasks that would then fall under the BGC as maintenance items?
Well, that certainly makes the best use of the situation, I agree. So my only other question is, as you consider reworking the user agreement, acknowledging many changes that need to be looked at, are you considering any financial changes, looking at cost recovery, the building, the upgrades, et cetera? Just a question.
So at this point in time, I would not be including that. I would be bringing back essentially the same agreement with some clarifications in there. However, that would definitely be up to council's prerogative as to when that is presented, if there would be any suggested changes. Shelley has something to add.
The only thing that we ask is if it is, council does come forward with a request to look at a rent or something like that, that we consider their calendar, their fiscal calendar. So that is April 1st to March 31st. So any changes prior to that would be difficult with their current budgets and things, but going forward, April 1st would be a preferred change date. And then whether or not if there is a change in that, would that change their responsibilities as well? So that we'd have to consider both.
Absolutely. And totally, as far as, different user groups, not-for-profit charities, the first few months of the year are not a time to change anything. And, changes, it's not about charging more or acquiring a profit or anything like that, but I do believe there's some responsibility for cost recovery. Not everyone in our community uses the facility, so it's kind of, I would just like to see it approached in a balanced way so we know all things are covered.
Options when we bring the agreement.
Yeah, we can propose a couple options. We do have some of our other facilities that are operated by other organizations that have a similar type of arrangement, such as Shepherd Family Park, our museum, Highwood Center, which also have that same minimal consideration. I can't recall off the top of my head if they're still at $1 or if they've been moved to a $10 because it's what our new template is now at, just due to inflation. So yeah, we can consider some options when we're looking at that and bring it back to council.
You know what you're doing this afternoon? Bringing back, isn't it this afternoon that you're doing it? For the agreement or the extension? Are you going to do that today or in a couple of weeks?
No, I'll bring that back in like February or March.
Fine.
April?
I just like to get things done. I'm sorry.
It's not going to be today.
Come on, you got
but
15
yeah,
minutes
I will
to
bring
pull it
back.
off. Like, let's go. Sounds good. Thank you very much. We'll deal with it in February or March, whenever you tell me you're ready. Thanks, Shelley. Thanks, Jody. Thanks, Shirley. Wide open Q&A. Anything? Councillor Jones?
Riley, just wondering if we could get an update on the closure of the pool this weekend.
Sure. So I actually had an update this morning from the contractor who is doing the repair. They're supposed to be on site 7 o'clock tomorrow morning and have the work complete tomorrow, so we should be open Wednesday morning as anticipated. Sorry, did you want more history or was it just about the opening?
I was just wondering if we're on track and everything's good.
Yeah, we're on track. We also were able to double up with, there was a construction closure planned for the same time period, so it made it a little easier to accommodate that, and we were managed to pull some work forward into this window since we were closed anyway. So
Is the fix sort of a like temporary fix, or are they changing it?
kinda not.
Okay.
We did talk about that to try and, we didn't want to spend much money on it or as little as possible, given that this is going to be torn out in 6 months. Unfortunately, I mean, the way the pipe works and the way it was cracked, we actually have to repair it like it was proper and long-term. We are reusing an old valve that is of questionable quality, but it should last the 6 months. So we're going to use an old valve and then couple on new pipe to the old pipe that's going to be all properly glued and flanged and everything. So it should be good. No problem.
No further questions. Thanks, Riley. So at this time, I will ask for a motion from Councillor Smith that Council recess the Committee of the Whole meeting on January 27th at 1:50 p.m. and move into a closed meeting.
I'll give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Councilman Chris, please.